Materials supplied by Microsoft Corporation may be used for internal review, analysis, or research only. Any editing, reproduction, publication, rebroadcast, public showing, internet, or public display is forbidden and may violate copyright law.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Amy Draves, and I'm here to welcome Maria Semple to the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. Maria is a screenwriter and wrote for shows like Arrested Development, Mad About You, and Ellen. She is here today to discuss her book, Where'd You Go Bernadette, a novel that touches on both Seattle and Microsoft. Maria lives in Seattle, where she teaches writing and is also the author of This One Is Mine. Please join me in giving her a very warm welcome.
Thank you. God, now I feel like tearing up. It's really weird to be here. It's really cool. I can't believe it, that this strange chapter of my life that was filled with self-pity and toxicity turned into a book, and now I'm standing here at Microsoft. So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. I was realizing as I was going through the book today, because I have my standard reading that I do, and there's not a lot of Microsoft stuff in that. So I thought that I'd go through and just do a reading that was mainly the Microsoft stuff. And in that, what I realized is I'm going to be reading a lot from the character of the admin, Sue Lin, who really was my favorite character of all. I think she's by far the funniest, and I always know who has the best comedy mind in my mind, the people who say that they like Sue Lin the most, because I think she's definitely the funniest and has the best kind of crazy attitude. And she's the admin. So I'm going to give you a little bit... Should I read first and then talk about how I came upon the Microsoft stuff? Okay, let me just read first, and then I'll just tell you how Microsoft found its way into the book. And I'm going to name names. None of them are here, so this is even better. Okay. Okay, so Where'd You Go, Bernadette? It's about this woman, Bernadette Fox, who lives in Seattle and doesn't like it, and blames all of her personal problems on Seattle. Her husband works at Microsoft, and Bernadette's a shut-in and just a really misanthropic person who does nothing for herself, instead has this virtual assistant in India doing all of her errands for her. And her husband, who's a big Microsoft guy, is kind of checked out. And so Bernadette has her own little weird private world, and then there's the world of Microsoft, and another big world is the world of the mothers at school, who Bernadette refers to as the Nats, because she just thinks that they're beneath her and she doesn't participate in the school stuff. And so when I was working on the book and I was realizing the husband has a world and Bernadette has a world, and I needed a kind of go-between between these worlds. And so I thought, what if I make one of the Nats, who's the mother at school, one of the mothers at school who doesn't like Bernadette, and Bernadette doesn't like her. I should make her an admin at Microsoft, because then this way I can use her to kind of pass information that I need narratively between the two worlds. And so I'm going to read you emails from Sue Lin. And this is, I'll tell you the way that I conceived Sue Lin, and it's something I've always wanted to write about. That when I was in LA, this has to have been 25 years ago, that I was just starting out, and I went to this concert, and it was this in a little club for They Might Be Giants, or, you know, that group. So I was there, and there was this guy there we were all in our 20s, and he was talking about them a lot and seemed to have something to do with them. And he was working at this agency that has now become kind of William Morris Endeavor. At the time it was called Triad. And during the course of the concert we were talking, and then I said to him, so what do you do at Triad? Because it was kind of unclear what he did. I said, what do you do at Triad? And he looked kind of frozen, like he couldn't really answer, and he said, "It's hard for me to describe what I do at Triad because I am Triad." And it turns out he was just an assistant there, but he had just was so identified with the place that I always wanted to write that character, I am Triad. And so Sue Lin, if she had a motto, it would be I am Microsoft. That was my way into this admin character, and I always thought that was such a funny attitude, and I knew that I could have a lot of fun with it. So here we go. This is one of the book is an epistolary novel, so it's written in letters. And this is, I'm going to read you letters or emails, because we live in modern times, between Sue Lin and her friend Audrey, who's the worst gnat of all. And she's reporting on goings on with Bernadette's husband, LG Branch. Audrey, I told you I'm starting to take the shuttle bus into work, right? Well, guess who I rode in with this morning? Bernadette's husband, Elgene Branch. I know why I have to save money by taking the Microsoft connector, but Elgene Branch? I wasn't certain it was him at first. That's how little we all see of him at school. So you're going to love this. There was only one seat available, and it was next to Elgene Branch, an inside one between him and the window. "Excuse me," I said. He was furiously typing on his laptop. Without looking up, he moved his knees to the side. I know he's a level 80 corporate VP, and I'm just an admin, but most gentlemen would stand up to let a woman through. I squeezed past him and sat down. "Looks like we're going to finally be getting some sunshine," I said. "That would be great." "I'm really looking forward to World Celebration Day," I said. He looked a little frightened, like he had no idea who I was. "I'm Lincoln's mom from Gaylor Street School." "Of course," he said. "I'd love to chat, but I've got to get this email out." He grabbed some headphones from around his neck, put them over his ears, and returned to his laptop. And get this, his headphones weren't even plugged in. They were those sound-canceling ones. The whole ride to Redmond, he never spoke to me again. Here at Microsoft, Steve B. just called a town hall for the Monday after Thanksgiving. The rumor mill is going crazy. My PM asked me to book a meeting room for the hours just prior, and I'm hard-pressed to find one. That can only mean one thing, another round of layoffs. Happy holidays. Our team leader heard some scuttlebutt that our project was getting canceled, so he found the biggest email thread he could, wrote, "Microsoft is a dinosaur whose stock is going to zero," then hit reply all. Never a good thing. Now I'm worried they're going to punish the whole org and that I won't land well, or I might not land at all. What if that meeting room I booked was for my own firing? Oh, Audrey, please keep me, Alexandra, and Lincoln in your prayers. I don't know what I'd do if I got managed out. The benefits here are gold-plated. If I still have a job after the holidays, I'll be happy to cover some of the food costs for the prospective parent brunch. Sue Lin. So, and now this is 20 pages later in the book. Again, Sue Lin to Audrey. You have been very dear not to ask me how the Microsoft town hall went. I'm sure you're dying to know if I was a casualty of the epic downsizing that has been all over the papers. This was a top-to-bottom riff, a 10% haircut. In the old days, a reorg meant a hiring spree. Now it means layoffs. As I might have told you, my project was about to be canceled, and my PM got a little unhinged and flamed half of Microsoft. I manically checked meeting room reservations and the jobs website, trying to glean something about my future. Our top people landed at Windows Phone and Bing. When I tried to get answers from my PM about me, all I received in response was eerie silence. Then yesterday afternoon, I got pinged by an HR rep who wanted to see me in the meeting room down the hall the next day. I had seen that appointment. I had no idea it was for me. I drove myself to work this morning because I didn't want the added indignity of having to load a bunch of boxes onto the connector. I showed up in the meeting room where the HR woman calmly informed me that our entire team, except for those who already left for Bing and Windows Phone, were being riffed. However, she said, you rank so well that we'd like to assign you to a special project located in Studio C. Audrey, I just about fell over. Studio C is in the Studio West campus, and their work is the most high profile at Microsoft. See, you guys are all going to bust me because the rest of the world thinks that all this is accurate. Now I'm just like going into the lion's den. Good news, I'm getting promoted. Bad news, the new product I'm working on is in high gear, and I'll be expected to work weekends. It's a hush-hush project. I don't even know its name yet. Bad news, I may not be able to make the prospective parent brunch. Good news, I'll definitely be able to pay for the food. Talk soon, and go Huskies. And so now she ends up being Elgin's admin. That's the secret team. That's the new team that she's been put on. See, you can do these things when you write novels. Just coincidences, right? But anyway, so now she becomes LG's admin, and I'm going to just remember that piece of information because now I'm going to switch over to Bernadette, who is the wife, and I'm going to read part of her story. It's not really a story; it's just her crazy rantings about Seattle. And this is a letter that she's written to an architect friend of hers back in Los Angeles, where she left 20 years ago. And so now she's in Seattle and she's explaining to her old architect friend what she's been doing for the last 20 years. Paul, greetings from sunny Seattle, where women are gals, people are folks. You can't sit Indian style, but you can sit crisscross applesauce. When the sun comes out, it's never called sun, but always sunshine. Boyfriends and girlfriends are partners. Nobody swears, but someone occasionally might drop the F-bomb. You're allowed to cough, but only into your elbow. And any request, reasonable or unreasonable, is met with no worries. Have I mentioned how much I hate it here? You probably wonder what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I've been resolving the conflict between public and private space in the single-family residence. I'm joking. I've been ordering shit off the internet. By now, you figured out that we moved to Seattle when LG was hired by Microsoft. My intention was never to grow old in this dreary upper left corner of the lower 48. I just wanted to leave LA in a snit, lick my considerably wounded ego, and when I determined that everyone felt sufficiently sorry for me, unfurl my cape and swoop in to launch my second act and show those bastards who the true bitch goddess of architecture really is. But then, LG ended up loving it here. Who knew that our Elgin had a bike-riding, Subaru-driving, keen-wearing alter ego just waiting to bust out? And bust out it did at Microsoft, which is this marvelous utopia for people with genius IQs. Wait, did I say Microsoft is marvelous and utopian? I meant to say sinister and evil. There are meeting rooms everywhere, more meeting rooms than offices, which are all teeny tiny. The first time I beheld LG's office, I gasped. It was hardly larger than his desk. He's now one of the biggest guys there, and still his office is minuscule. You can barely fit a couch long enough to nap on, so I ask, what kind of office is that? Another oddity, there are no assistants. LG heads a team of 250, and they all share one assistant, or admins as they're called, accent on the ad. In LA, someone half as important as LG would have two assistants, an assistant for their assistants, until every bright son or daughter west of the 405 was on the payroll. But not at Microsoft. They do everything themselves through specially coded portals. Okay, calm down. I'll tell you more about the meeting rooms. That's one of my favorite lines. No one ever thinks that's funny. There are maps on every wall, which is perfectly normal, right? For businesses to have a map on the wall showing their territories or distribution routes. Well, on Microsoft walls are maps of the world. And in case you're still unclear about their dominion, under these maps are the words, the world. The day I realized their goal was world domination, I was out at Redmond having lunch with LG. What's Microsoft's mission anyway, I asked, wolfing down a piece of Costco birthday cake. It was Costco Day on campus, and they were signing people up for discounted membership, using free sheet cake as enticement. No wonder I get confused and sometimes mistake the place for a marvelous utopia. For a long time, LG answered, not eating cake because the man has discipline. Our mission was to have a desktop computer in every house in the world. But we essentially accomplished that years ago. So what's your mission now? I asked. He looked at me warily. Well, he said, looking around, that's not something we talk about. See, a conversation with anyone at Microsoft invariably ends in paranoia and suspicion. They're even terrified of their own wives because, as they like to say, it's a company built on information and that can just walk out the door. Here's the second way a conversation with a Microsoft employee ends. Let's say I'm at the playground with my daughter. I'm bleary-eyed, pushing her on the swings, and one swing over, there's an outdoorsy father. Because fathers in Seattle only come in one style, and that's outdoorsy. He has seen a diaper bag I'm carrying, which isn't a diaper bag at all, but one of the endless ship gifts with the Microsoft logo LG brings home. And so now she does dialogue just between them. I hope I can do it properly here. Outdoorsy dad. Hey, you work at Microsoft? Me. No, my husband does. He's in robotics. Outdoorsy dad. I'm a Microsoft too. Me. Feigning interest, because really, I could give a shit, but wow, this guy is chatty. Oh, really? What do you do? Outdoorsy dad. I work for Messenger. Me. What's that? Outdoorsy dad. You know Windows Live? Me. Outdoorsy dad. You know the MSN homepage? Me. Outdoorsy dad. Losing patience. When you turn on your computer, what comes up? Me. The New York Times. Outdoorsy dad. Well, there's a Windows homepage that usually comes up. Me. You mean the thing that's preloaded when you buy a PC? I'm sorry, I have a Mac. Outdoorsy dad. Getting defensive because everyone there is lusting for an iPhone, but there's a rumor that if Ballmer sees you with one, you'll get shit-canned. Even though this hasn't been proven, it hasn't been disproven either. No, I'm talking about Windows Live. This is Outdoorsy Dad again. It's the most visited homepage in the world. Me. I believe you. Outdoorsy Dad. What's your search engine? Me. Google. Outdoorsy Dad. Bing's better. Me. No one said it wasn't. Outdoorsy Dad. If you ever went once to Hotmail, Windows Live, Bing, or MSN, you'd see a tab at the top of the page that says Messenger. That's my team. Me. Cool. What do you do for Messenger? Outdoorsy Dad. My team is working on an end-user C# interface for HTML5, ... And then they kind of trail off because at some point in every conversation, there's nobody in the world smart enough to dumb it down. It turns out the whole time in LA, LG was just a guy in socks searching for a carpeted, fluorescent-lit hallway in which to roam at all hours of the night. At Microsoft, he found his ideal habitat. When Microsoft built their newest campus, they made it the home of LG's team. In the atrium of his new building, there's a sandwich shop with the sign, Boar's Head Finest Deli Meats Served Here. The moment I saw that, I knew we'd never see him again. And so that's just a little piece of Bernadette. So now I'm going to read a couple more sections, which is we're going back to Sue Lin now. So now, at the time of this, Sue Lin works for LG, and he starts out being unbelievably rude to her, but then they start bonding, let's call it. This is before they bond in that way, but this is as the road to bonding. So this is Sue Lynn to Audrey. Audrey, you want to be transported back? Well, buckle your seatbelt. I just had the most devastating conversation with LG Branch, and you'll be shocked to learn what I just did. It's gossip about Bernadette, incidentally. I'd put LG in a conference room for an 11 a.m. all hands. I was running around fulfilling laptop requests, expediting furniture exchanges, authorizing battery orders. I even found a missing ball for the foosball game. All I can say about life at Mr. Softy is, when it rains, it pours. When I got to my office, did I mention I finally have a window office? No less than 6 co-workers told me LG had come by looking for me in person. He'd written a note on my door for everyone to see, asking if we could have lunch. He signed it EB, but some joker had come by and changed it to E-Dog, one of his many nicknames. As I headed out, he appeared at my door wearing shoes for once. I thought we could bicycle, he said. It was such a nice day, we decided to get some sandwiches at the deli downstairs and bike to a nice spot off campus. Because I'm new to Samantha 2, that's the name of their team, I didn't realize we have a dedicated fleet of bicycles. LG is quite an acrobat. He put one foot on the pedal and skated along with the other, then swung it over the seat. I haven't been on a bike in years, and I'm afraid it showed. Is something wrong? LG said when I veered off the path and onto the lawn. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I think that's so funny that someone can't even ride a bike. See, look, I crack myself up, if not you. I just, for some reason, the idea of her just like getting on a bike and it just like going onto the lawn. I'll just say that line again, where I'm not just whorishly making myself laugh. Is something wrong? LG said when I veered off the path and onto the lawn. I think the handlebars are loose. I said. It was the damnedest thing. I couldn't keep the bike pointing straight. As I got back on, LG stood on his bike with both feet on the pedals and jiggled so he didn't fall over. You think that's easy? Try it sometime. I finally got the hang of it and we zoomed along. I'd forgotten the freedom that comes with riding a bicycle. The wind was fresh against my face, the sun was shining, and the trees were still dripping from the storm. We rode through the commons where people were taking their lunch outside, enjoying the sunshine and the Seahawks cheerleaders, who were doing a demonstration on the soccer field. I could feel the curious eyes upon me. Who's that? What's she doing with LG Branch? And now they talk about Bernadette for a while. And now she finishes up by saying this. This is the ride home. The sky was black again, except for a brilliant white cloud patch where rays of sunshine broke through. We rode in a darling neighborhood of little bungalows cuddled together. I actually don't think there are any around here. I just made that part up. And I think she says you can see Lake Washington. Oh, no, actually, I took that egregious piece of misinformation out. Okay. I love the gray-green putty colors against the leafless cherry trees and Japanese maples. I could feel the crocus, daffodil, and tulip bulbs underground, gaining strength, patiently enduring our winter, waiting to bust forth for another glorious Seattle spring. I held out my hand and whooshed it through the thick, healthy air. What other city has given birth to the jumbo jet, the internet superstore, the personal computer, the cellular phone, online travel, grunge music, the big box store, good coffee? Where else could somebody like me ride bikes along the man with the 4th most watched TED Talk? I started laughing. What's wrong? LG asked. Oh, nothing. I was remembering how crushed I was when my father couldn't afford to send me to USC and instead I had to go to the UW. I'd hardly been out of Washington State, and I still have never even been to New York City. Suddenly I didn't care. Let everyone else travel all over the world. What they're searching for in Los Angeles and New York and beyond is something I already have right here in Seattle. I want it all to myself. And then, I'll do one final piece, which I think is kind of that people always ask me about. This has a few pieces in it that people are curious about. This is again from Sue Lynn to Audrey. Audrey, this morning I got on the connector of my usual stop and settled into a seat in the back. LG boarded a few stops later, looking like he hadn't slept. He lit up when he saw me. I think he'd forgotten I signed us up for the same connector. Did you know he's from a prominent family in Philadelphia? Not that he would come out and say such a thing, but as a boy he spent all his summers in Europe. I was embarrassed to admit that I'd never left the United States. We'll have to change that, won't we? He said. Don't jump to any conclusions, Audrey. He said that rhetorically. It's not like he's planning on taking me on a trip to Europe or anything. He went to boarding school. On that topic, it seems you and I were simply misinformed. People like me and you who were born in Seattle and went to the UW, we lack the, well, I don't want to use the word sophistication, but we lack the something to understand this broader worldview. When LG asked about me, I was flustered because I've led such a dull life. The only thing I could think of that is remotely interesting is how my father went blind when I was 7, and that I had to take care of him. No kidding, LG said. So you communicated in sign language? Only when I was feeling cruel, I retorted. LG was confused. He was blind, I said, not deaf. We both broke up laughing. Someone quipped, "What is this, the Belltown connector?" It's an inside joke. The Belltown connector is notoriously raucous, much more so than the Queen Anne connector. So it was a combination of get a room and a reference to what fun they have on the Belltown connector. I'm not sure my explanation helps you get the humor. Maybe you had to be there. We turned to the subject of work. LG was anxious about the amount of time he was taking off for Christmas, and now they talk a little bit about that. So I think I'm going to stop here for now. This is just, and now I'll talk a little bit about how this Microsoft piece came out, because I wanted to write this book because of the Bernadette Fox character, because that really was what I was going through. I'd moved from Los Angeles. I'd been a TV writer. I had a whole context of life going on. And I just assumed that I'd move up to Seattle where we knew nobody, and that I would just kind of move here and make friends and everything would pick up where it left off. And I moved here and was just, I don't know, I kind of do know how to explain it, but it's too personal and boring. But I really did not feel welcome here. I felt like nobody got me. I felt just really scared and shut out, kind of socially, from Seattle. And so I write about that in the book, the Seattle freeze and all of this stuff. You know, people talk about this, but I really experienced it. I had no idea. And I kind of thought I was going crazy. And instead of taking responsibility for myself, I just decided that I hated Seattle. And so it was bad. It was a bad mental state to be in, but at least I recognized that it was funny. For someone to, you know, I wasn't writing. I never thought I'd write again. And instead of just like dealing with that, I instead hated an entire city of people I didn't even know. It was easier than looking inward. And so I came up with this crazy character, right, of Bernadette Fox. And so my daughter goes to Meridian, that school in Wallingford. We live in Belltown. My daughter goes to Meridian. And when I first moved here, I was thumbing through the Meridian parent handbook, and I was really surprised at all the Microsoft.com email addresses, and I assumed that meant earthlink.net or, you know, yahoo.com or something. I didn't understand it meant that those people work at Microsoft. And so I was trying to make the book as authentic as I could. And so I knew I wanted the husband to be in tech because, see, Blaze, are you here? Blaze isn't here. He didn't come. No, I didn't think he would. Blaze, no, okay. So Blaze, who's my friend. So do you guys know Blaze? You're nodding.
Blaze?
How do you pronounce his last name?
Blaze Aguirre-Yacas is in Europe giving a TED Talk.
Oh, he is. Okay, okay. So good. So how do you pronounce his last name?
Aguirre-Yacas.
Okay, so that. that last name that he just said. Okay, so Blaze, I had met before we moved to Seattle, before we even thought about moving to Seattle, at the TED conference, because my boyfriend and I would go, and it was really fun. And when when our daughter was just 6 months old, we were checking into the hotel, and next to us was this cool guy and his wife, and they had a baby. And we were kind of joking about we're the only two people stupid enough to bring a baby to a TED conference, but we were always there. And so we just became, like, hey, you with the baby, across the room type thing. And they were friendly. And then he gave a TED talk, the photosynth one, the first one he did. And it was like, hey, that's my friend, the dad, and now he's giving a TED talk. And I can say this because I've told his wife, this is really pretty open. I found Blaze incredibly smart and attractive. And I just thought he was so cool. I couldn't, because I know show business people. I didn't know these tech people. And I thought that he just was so charming. And so I thought, oh, what if I make the dad like Blaze, right? But then by the time we moved up here, I'd lost touch with him. This was really just 4-year-old impression that I had of Blaze. And so I, went on the TED.com and looked at the TED Talk and thought it was funny about the 4th most watched TED Talk, and I just thought that was kind of a funny marker, because there's, in the TED world, it's such currency, these TED Talks, and I just thought it was funny to kind of write about that. And so, So he was always the one that I had in my mind a little bit, just very vaguely. If I thought, okay, if I'm going to do Microsoft, it should be like that guy I met down at the TED conference. And then I realized I needed at the time I thought the word was secretary. I needed the secretary, the mom, to work at Microsoft. And I'd never been out here. I didn't know anybody, who worked here. And so I was at the ballet one night, and this guy next to me during intermission got his phone out and started noodling around on the phone. And I think we'd been chatting before then, and I said, oh, what's that? Because I'd never seen this thing before. And he said, oh, it's a Windows phone. And I said, I didn't know that they make Windows phones. And he said, well, it's a prototype, and it comes out in a month, or it's being released whenever, shortly. And I was right in my writing mode, and I was like ready to just write this stuff. And I said, hey, you work at Microsoft? And he said, yes. And I said, I'm a novelist, and I'm writing this book, and I really want the character to work at Microsoft. At this point, I didn't know what the job or, what he would be. And Saba, does anyone know Saba? From the Windows Phone, right? Okay, so Saba, who is in Europe also, they're all in Europe, my people, my 2 guys. And so Saba then, within 2 or 3 days, I was out here on the campus with him, and all my Microsoft stuff, I mean, people think that I spent a lot of time here, but really I was only here for about 2 hours. It was the only time I've ever been here. And he just showed me around, and basically every single thing in the book that I've read to you was just from that 2-hour little meeting with, going to the visitor center, going to the Commons, going to his office. The Seahawks cheerleaders weren't there that day, but there was a poster up saying this, I wanted to call them the Seagulls, which is what they're called. But I felt like if this was a book going out across the country, they wouldn't know what the Seagulls was. So I hated to have to call them the Seahawks cheerleaders. But, and there was stuff about the dunk tank. I don't know. It was all, I just started just absorbing all of this stuff on basically posters all over. And so, I just thought, I'll write about this, because it seems like what people in Seattle do is work at Microsoft, because I didn't know that really. And so I was really happy to find Saba, and he then read several drafts of the novel. And in fact, this is an arc. This is right before, I think I did 2 little passes after this. And I think that if there's some little things that are wrong in terms of terminology, he fixed them for the final book, because he read through it, and I just said, no detail too small. I want it all exactly right. And so he was a great friend, and is now a great friend. And he really helped me with all the details in the book. So, like I say, this is the room where probably you all think I got the details wrong. But I'm telling you, out in the world, they think I got the details right. So that'll just be our little secret. And so I was very happy to. And the weird thing about Microsoft is I didn't think that I was doing anything that. That interesting, let's say, that I thought, okay, I just want to make it real. But people around the country and around the world, I mean, this book this morning just sold Polish rights. I've sold it in 25 countries. And almost every letter that, when you sell foreign rights and they want you to go to their publishing house, they send you a letter explaining what they love about the book. And all of these foreign editors Microsoft has been in the first paragraph of what they love about the book and why they think they'll sell the book so well, because they see it as this window into this very mysterious world, and you don't want to say, hey, don't listen to me, I've been there for 2 hours. Like, I really don't have the secrets, but they seem to think that the book represents some kind of taking the curtain off, of Microsoft, which I'm sorry, I didn't think that I was doing that, and I didn't bill myself that way. I just thought if I'm going to do it, I want to try to get the details right. But you all work in a very fascinating place is basically what I'm trying to tell you to the rest of the world. And so okay, so that's it. So that's what I'm going to say about Microsoft and about the book. And I'm wondering if there's any questions. Yes.
Was this writing this book a form of therapy for you? Have you come to terms with Seattle now, or do you still have...
Yeah. Well, see, I love Seattle now, and in fact, I even loved Seattle as I was writing the book. But the thing is, I was kind of stuck with the character who hated Seattle, and by the end of the book, she loves Seattle. And the only prose Seattle stuff is that little piece that I read of Sue Lynn's, which actually I think is valid. At the end of the bike ride, of the weather and how beautiful it is, and I mean, I was trying to. I couldn't make it too poetic because she's not a poet, but I think there's something beautiful about the winters and knowing, and just how gray it is, and then knowing how beautiful it's going to be, and it's kind of your little secret, that how fabulous it's about to become, and when it all goes into bloom, and then at the end, but Bernadette speaks quite rapturously and kind of poetically in the last 2 or 3 pages about Seattle. And I knew that that's where I was headed. And as I was writing the book, I was really liking Seattle, but I also recognized how irrational and specific and funny my hatred of Seattle was. And so I just wanted to just get it down as soon as I could. It's nothing that I'm proud of now as I stand here, and talk about it. It was really just a low point in my life, but it's something I'm ashamed of even, just that I just really couldn't get it together. But like I say, I'm a writer and I'm a comedy writer, and so I just recognized that there was something that was funny about that fundamentally. And so writing the book wasn't exactly cathartic. I mean, I think the fact that the cathartic thing was finding when I understood that what I was doing, it was, I'll in all of this, while I was in this bad state, I talked to a friend back in LA, and I was going on and on and on and on about how miserable I was here, and I didn't like anyone, and just running down the place and its people. Just trust me, it was not pretty. And he said to me, Maria, you're a writer, and writers must write. And if you don't write, you will become a menace to society. And that's a big line in the book that somebody tells Bernadette. And so that in that moment when he said, you will be a menace to society, in that moment I knew my book. I had it was like flashed in my head. I thought, me in 15 years, if I don't move forward, what would my life be? I'd be so crippled by social anxiety. I wouldn't be able to have interactions with people. I would be totally alienated from my boyfriend, the husband in the book. But at the same time, I had this daughter who I was just totally in love with. And I thought, but I would still really love my daughter. That would be the only good thing in my life. And so I just wrote a book about that. In 15 years, what menace to society looks like. And so the therapeutic thing was deciding to turn, lemons into lemonade, to put it stupidly. And in that moment when I kind of said, I'm a writer and I'm going to do what I love, that's the thing that solves all your problems, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to that. You know, when you're doing what you love, the perspective changes very quickly, you know, then the person who cuts you off doesn't seem that bad, you know, in traffic. But if you're miserable, then you just want to chase that person down and, you know, they ruined your life. And so it was that shift that really helped me. Question. Yes.
What message would you like your readers of your book to walk away with?
Interesting. The message that you know, I think if there was a message, it's to move forward. I think just off of my last answer, I think that if there's any message, I mean, you know, a lot of novelists won't really talk about the good novelists don't talk about messages and they don't think about messages. But that what I will say is that I knew in the beginning of the book my character was stuck, and I knew my book would end when she had moved forward and become an artist again, you know. And so that to me was hopefully what the book is kind of about or something. It's the journey from not doing what you love to doing what you love, and how doing what you love heals, you know. So I think if that's as close to a theme or something, you know, that I can come up with.
Thank you.
Yes.
A lot of the humor in the book revolves around the school and the parents, and their obsession with, you know, participating enough, but also building up the stature of the school.
Yeah.
Sounds like your daughter is still in a private school?
Oh, yes. So the thing is, okay, so there's this crazy school well, it's actually kind of a normal, good school. You know, basically the school and Microsoft, what I'd say about both of them is that I actually portray them as good places. There's just crazy people running around them, you know, which I think is, I'm sure you all know your share of crazy people running around Microsoft. So basically, I actually think the school is a good school. There's nothing the school does that's bad. They have a good kind of... I was just talking to my boyfriend about it today, about the crazy curriculum that you know, it's not crazy, but it's all really super PC in a way that I was never taught, you know, and it's all the wells in Africa and raising money, you know, it's all that type of thing that we never did, you know, and it's community, and there's a lot of this anti-bullying stuff, which I guess is going on all around every school now does that. But you know, character traits they're kind of teaching, you know. And so, yeah, my daughter goes to a private school, and I love the private school that she goes to. And that I didn't, again, it's going to sound disingenuous, but I didn't really think that I was writing a parody of it just maybe... I didn't think I was writing a parody of private school, and it might speak to the fact that perhaps I didn't have a good command of tone or something. But I was trying to write about school, and then I guess I can't help myself. I then have to be funny about it, you know. But I'm a big fan of these super liberal private schools. I see no problem with them. But you know, there's some funny details in the school, and I was going through all my papers of my drafts of this, and I found a flyer in there just yesterday in all my boxes of papers, and one of them was this handout for Global Studies Day, where the 4th grade was debating the pros and cons of the Chinese occupation of Tibet, which I wrote about in the book, if anyone remembers that part, and where the daughter says, that's how PC our school is. It's so PC, it turns around and becomes full circle. So they have kids debating the pros of the Chinese occupation of Tibet. You know, it's just so extreme. But stuff like that, you know, you see those things and it's kind of funny, but I don't really mean to be going after it in such a mean way. I hope I'm not. Yes.
I really enjoyed the Antarctica part.
Oh, yes, the Antarctica.
What your resource was for that, or if you spent 2 hours in Antarctica.
Oh, I spent 3 weeks in Antarctica. So at the end, they all end up in Antarctica, and I went on the exact same cruise, right? It was already booked when I came up with the idea for the book. And I didn't, and I actually think it's pretty normal to go to Antarctica because I'm a really big traveler. And anyone who's kind of likes travel, you know about Antarctica, and you get the Lindblad catalogs and you think, I want to go there one day. And it didn't seem that weird to me, but we had signed up for it maybe in February for the following December. And just anecdotally, people would just say, what are you doing over Christmas? We're going to Antarctica. They were like, you're what? Nobody could believe it. They thought it was the craziest thing they'd ever heard. And so I thought, okay, well, why don't I point my family from the beginning of the book to Antarctica? Because it's apparently interesting to people. I obviously am going because I'm interested in it, but I didn't know how kind of weird it sounded. And so I didn't know how it would play out or if they would ever actually get to Antarctica, but I thought it's original and it's of interest. And so when I went down there, I just fell in love with it the way that Bernadette did. And so I wanted to include it in the book. And so I did. Yes.
I was thinking that you're characterizing Microsoft in this novel. Did you think about other companies like Amazon or startups? Why did you choose Microsoft?
Yes. Well, okay. So Starbucks or Amazon. See, I thought, because Blaze was my guy, I needed it to be tech. And I wanted to do TED. I thought TED was kind of funny. Again, in the same Antarctica way, that we would go to the TED conference, and it's very different when you're there, and it's kind of interesting. And I thought, if I can do a little piece about backstage at TED, it's going to be interesting for the reader, So I needed the guy to be in the tech world. So therefore, no Starbucks, no Costco, no Boeing. And Amazon I thought about, but I felt it would be too inside and kind of meta to write a book about Amazon, and I really don't like Amazon, and so I felt like. Yeah, good. I didn't want to give them real estate in my book. Like I just, and also I didn't know that you don't want to be the writer, you just don't want to be the novelist who writes about Amazon. Then it's like what do you think about Amazon? And then I can't control myself and I'll say, hate them. And then you don't want to be that person, And so I just thought, let's just stay away from Amazon and pretend it doesn't exist. Because it just felt like a writer writing about a novelist writing about Amazon. It just felt like too navel gazing, kind of, So I didn't think it would be interesting. Yes.
Love the book. I have a question about
Thank you.
Earlier in your career.
Oh, yes.
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development, yes.
Have you seen season 4?
Yes, I've seen the first 3 or 4 episodes, I'd say, of season 4, and I'm frankly surprised that they make any sense at all, because I feel like the show is on a trajectory of making less and less sense. I was there on year 3, and I had no idea what was going on most of the time in the rewrite room. And as the people who've read this book, I really pride myself on being able to complicate a plot as complicated as the big boys. I think I'm better at it than those people, honestly, on Arrested Development. I think that's my real strength, is being able to just plant stuff that you don't know that I'm planting it, and then it comes back right. Look, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying that this is something that I know I can do. I'd be in that rewrite room. It would be like panic that someone would ask me, what do you think should happen now? Because I'd be like, I don't know what anyone's talking about. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what are their motivations? And I felt like it was very hard for me to write on that show. Now, that said, I apparently did a good job on it, because they all like me there. And I guess I did. Whenever I look at I can't even look at season 3 without having PTSD. But anytime I have seen it on TV, there's my joke. So, there's stuff, so I, for some reason in my mind, seem to think it was making less and less sense every year. Did people agree with that seasons got less coherent as they went along? No? Yes. Okay. So you know what I'm saying? So then you just think if everything goes the way it has been, then season 4 would really make no sense and it would just be like a jumble. But I actually think there's some really funny stuff in that. I think it's I was really impressed with there's some really good weird jokes. I mean, I think a lot of it is referring back to the first 3 seasons. I think there's a lot of just like naming funny runs from the past, which is, I can't, and I barely remember those runs, but I guess this is for super fans, right? The whole Netflix thing. And then there are a lot of them. So, and then they seem to have done well, but it was, it was fun. I liked it, but it was just a crazy year of my life. Yes.
A couple of online questions.
Okay.
I don't know what the first one is, so you'll have to tell me. So where did you get the idea for the group VAV?
Oh, VAV. Oh, my favorite thing. That was Sue Lin. I didn't read this. So VAV, I love that. Thank you, Mr. Disembodied online person. Okay, so VAV is the thing that Sue Lin, the admin, it's her support group. And VAV stands for Victims Against Victimhood. And so I like it because it's kind of a gross, it sounds gross, VAV, which I also, so already I'm loving it. But so Victims Against Victimhood is this thing where I got it because I wanted her to have a support group, and I didn't want it just to be Al-Anon because I love Al-Anon too much, and I didn't want to just make fun of Al-Anon, but I wanted it to be an Al-Anon type. I wanted to do Al-Anon, but without having to like bring Al-Anon down in the mud. And so I came up with this thing. I wish I could find the passage. But so what it is it's for people who are victims. But they don't want to be treated like victims, but they are victims, and it just keeps going on and on and on, the way she describes it. And so the reason why I thought of that was because I like to read small town newspapers online, and I like the little stories and stuff. You can get a lot of interesting facts about human existence from these little newspapers. And it was a small town paper where a yoga teacher had apparently giving a woman a correction and a downward dog had reached into her yoga pants or something, and so she was suing him, and there was a lawsuit going on, and it had gone to trial, and the yoga teacher was there, and then when they called up the woman to testify, she wouldn't testify because her lawyer said it would be re-victimizing her. And I just thought that was really funny, to be re-victimized. And so I thought I want to do something with being a victim here, but because a lot of times these people who are victims, and they talk like they're victims, and then you say, oh, I'm sorry you're a victim. I'm not a victim, and it's like, wait, what is it? I don't so there's just something funny about that to me. So that's what VAV is. And it's her insane support group. And it's one of my favorite things. That was a real weird, that sounds like something out of Arrested Development. I mean, that could be on that show. And they have crazy acronyms for everything that don't even really track, which is what I think is funny. I don't know, it's just a really second-rate support group. Yeah. Yes.
So we discussed this book in a book club.
Oh.
We had some really strong opinions against Elgin.
Against LG, yeah.
Yeah, because we thought he sort of gave up on the marriage. And then we had some guys in the group who thought that it just happened organically and maybe he wasn't as fault as some of the other people were thinking. What was your perspective?
On LG?
And
yeah.
The marriage sort of decision.
On the marriage, well, okay, I think that, see, I'm much more down on Bernadette myself. See, it's so weird. I didn't think people would like her particularly because I didn't really like her. I don't think she's likable, and I think that if in the marriage that's gone wrong between the two of them, I really think it's her fault entirely. I think that he, because she's a liar, he's not a liar. I mean, I guess later he has a thing, but that's like way after the fact. I think that she leads this secret life of, oversharing with her personal assistant in India, and like that's her emotional life, is this person she pays 75 cents an hour to order takeout, from Daniel's Broiler. It's like, and she doesn't, and she acts like she's doing all this stuff herself, and so to me she's the problem in the marriage now. But what I will say is that when you write novels, or at least when I write novels, I should say, is that I think you start being, you begin and you have an interest in certain characters. So the characters I really was interested in when I started out were Bernadette and the daughter Bee, right? Those were obvious. I mean, I'm saying obviously, but those were my ways in. And I also loved Audrey. She was real easy to write. And I loved Sue Lynn. She was real easy to write. Now, the husband, over the many drafts of the book that I wrote before I tried to get an agent or anything for it, everyone who read it, and these were just friends of mine who were not writers, just kind of moms who were in book groups, and I was saying, will you read this and tell me what you think? Everyone had a problem with the LG character, and I think it's because I didn't kind of care about him enough in the beginning, because he wasn't my way into the book, and so I spent 2, 3, 4, 5 drafts kind of trying to bring him up to the level of the others, and that I think that one of the problems with the book, I have a compulsion to just rip apart my book, which I'm sure most novelists don't do when they give talks about it. But I think that one of the kind of bodies that's buried in the book is that Bernadette's been kind of crazy for 20 years, or let's call it 15 years up in Seattle. And I don't know what this marriage has been like for 15 years, and I kind of can, I mean, look, and you didn't want to read about it, believe me, I didn't want to write about it. So it's not even like I should have had the summary of 15 years of marriage, but I think that it's a little unclear about how the marriage went off the track because I didn't write about it in the book. This is being made into a movie, and the screenwriters, these guys who wrote 500 Days of Summer, just emailed me desperately, like, what went on in their marriage? And I was like, I don't know, that's your problem now, And so, I mean, I think charitably, it's room for discussion, uncharitably, it's that maybe I didn't do my work. See, why am I saying that publicly? Okay, yes.
The home kind of represent?
The house, yes. Well, yeah, there was a lot of kind of symbolism of what happened to Bernadette. Yeah.
That final description of the place she chose to live in Seattle was...
Yes.
I just thought that kind of represented it.
Exactly. That represents it, exactly, the decay. Yeah, and it's kind of gone wild. Now, it seems like time's up, that everyone has a job to do. One more, yes.
What's wrong with Amazon?
So why don't I like Amazon? I don't like Amazon because I feel like it's destroying life as we know it. And I think that they are, I think that that's their mission, and I think that that's what they are. They're picking off sectors of the economy one by one by one, destroying the middle class, destroying life as we know it. I really think that. I wrote an op-ed piece for the Seattle Times in December about it, which didn't win me any friends in Amazon. But I feel like I've come out. I'm one of the few novelists who will come out against Amazon. But I think that I wrote this op-ed piece because my daughter had a birthday party to go to. I wanted to get a toy, and I went to this toy store, and I went into the Wallingford Center and to buy a toy, and the person said, oh no, this has been closed for 6 months. It went out of business. And I realized that's my experience of Seattle, and my neighborhoods are that place is out of business, that place is out of business, that place is out of business. And the thing that they all have in common is that I started buying that stuff on Amazon. And I felt like it's my fault. So for the last year and a half, I've been boycotting Amazon. I've not canceled my account. I don't do anything there. And I wrote this op-ed piece for the Seattle Times to try to encourage people to do it themselves and to realize it's not that hard. It's what we were all doing 5 years ago, is you go into a store and you buy something. It's not, everyone acts like, oh, I could never do that. It's so inconvenient, And as I said in my op-ed piece, you could get sex from a hooker, but most people wouldn't enjoy it. So, and that's what I feel like. I feel like it's getting sex from a hooker, Amazon is. On that crude joke, I will say goodbye. Thank you.